Welcome back to Journey Map, the Media Propulsion Laboratory podcast, where we dive deep into the leading minds behind the world's top creative agencies and industry experts. My name is Dave Hale, and today I'm joined by Kevin Goodman, founder and CEO at FRC Marketing. In this episode, we talk about Kevin's passion for music and sports and how he combines them to create unique experiences for brands, bands, and fans, the importance of creating community-centered events, and the value of authenticity. I hope you enjoy this conversation, and thank you for taking this journey with us today. Kevin Goodman, what's good, man? I'm sure you've never heard that before.
I think the last time I heard that was maybe grade 6, and I don't want to tell you how long ago that was. Yeah, listen, it's to quote the Loving Spoonful, it's hot times, summer in the city, back of my neck getting dirty and gritty. Summer's officially here, I think.
Summer's officially here. For context to the listener, we're recording this June 20th, 2024, and in the parts of the world that Kevin and I reside in, I think it's like 40-something degrees. So it's Celsius. So it is, it's a bit hot. Kevin, you are the founder, CEO of FRC Marketing. We're going to get into all things FRC later in the conversation. Where I wanted to start, you have the tagline for the agency, "We live to do cool shit." When did you first decide in life you wanted to be the cool shit person?
Here's the joke. To be brutally honest with you, I'm usually the least coolest person in the room, and I'm totally okay with that. I kind of dance to the beat of my own drum most of the time, and sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that's not such a good thing. And I've been really, really fortunate in my professional career, and I'm putting up quotation marks because I'm not a professional, that I've been able to follow my passions. My passions from my formative teenage years, and not, if not before, has always been sports and music.
Yeah.
And I guess, going to college or university for one thing and ending up doing another is exactly what happened to me.
Yeah.
And I just try and do things that other people don't think of or other people won't think of.
So, Canadian success story, Shopify's CEO, Toby, has been quoted as saying, or in an interview I once heard, he said that if you really want to become successful in life, find two things you're passionate about aren't actually normally connected, and find the connection between those two things. I'm paraphrasing, but it's about that, which is effectively what you've just said, being passionate about sports and being passionate about music. So did you get one of those from one parent, one from the other? What was, how did those two passions come into your life, Kevin?
I mean, always around sports, whether it was playing sports or watching sports, going to sports events. Really fortunate to have had a father that loved sports. And back in the day when, you'd go on family road trips, my father was a music fan. And my first show was with my dad, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, 1973, Ontario Place Forum, where the stage went around and around and around. And he continued to take my brother and I to shows. And, during, the time of my childhood, he would be listening to everything from the Eagles to Steely Dan to James Taylor to the Carpenters, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And I just kind of really, even to this day, as I laugh most of the time, I'm usually stuck somewhere between 1968 and 1978 in terms of, the artists that I listen to.
Well, I think that's true for most people, though, right? It's like, what do they say? It's like 14 to 24 is like whatever you listen to in that area is where you're going to kind of get stuck. In my case, at least the bands you're referencing are still kind of like have reverence and are cool today. The bands that are stuck in my head, like, you sound like a douchebag if you are still saying that you listen to those things, because mine was kind of early 2000s alt rock. You can paint that picture for
Yeah.
yourself now.
Well, I started listening to, and I say this because I'm so fortunate to work with them. I started listening to CFNY, which is now 102.1 The Edge, in 1979. And that was just such a seminal year in terms of genres and new genres emerging and other genres going away. And what I heard on CFNY, really influenced my musical tastes. From I could list bands from now until next week that I listened to during those days, and that kind of impacted my taste. And the interesting thing was, between 14 and 24, you couldn't have paid me enough money to go to a Grateful Dead show, because all my buddies were into the Dead and Deadheads and going to shows. And Kev, come with us to Hamilton, come with us to Rochester, come with us to Buffalo, come with us to Syracuse. I said, no way. And now I've kind of immersed myself in all things Grateful Dead, and have done so for probably the past 15 years. So I kind of hopped on that bus a little bit later, but those are my passions: music and sports.
Well, I've a great therapist who once said to me, Dave, we must hold our identities lightly. So you can be a deadhead later in life. There's nothing
There
wrong
you
with
go.
that at all.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
where does this kind of application and acceptance into a BA in geography and urban development come from? I mean, from everything you just said, I'm not drawing the linear path. So what was high
Yeah.
school like? What kind of led you down this path?
I love geography. I will be brutally honest. All through junior high, high school, and university, and was trying to think, how the hell can I create a business out of geography? And it wasn't just maps and lakes and rivers and plate tectonics, but it was very much about cities and development and culture, and what makes an urban environment and what doesn't make an urban environment. And it just really interests me. And I guess the cultural hubs of what amazing cities like Toronto or New York or Los Angeles or Tokyo or other global cities have in common are great cultural hubs and very vibrant music scenes
Mm.
and cultural scenes and sports scenes. And fortunate enough to live in Toronto to be able to absorb all of that. And when I did graduate university in the 90s, early 90s, very early 90s, interest rates were 19%, 20%. Nobody was building, nobody was doing development, nobody was planning communities. And I had all of this background, and I said, God, what am I going to do? And I said, well, I know a lot about sports. Let me see if I can try and figure out how to do something in the sports space.
So we have an Ontario kid, goes to University of Western Ontario and Ryerson in Toronto Metropolitan University now.
TMU, yeah.
Um, how do you wind up? So you say, okay, there's no opportunities in the area that I've just studied with these insanely high interest rates, of which I suppose we should all be thankful now that even with what we've been dealing with the last few years, it's nowhere near 19%. How do you identify Dallas, Texas, and the folks at Street Ball Partners as seemingly your first stop in your professional journey?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have had a friend at that time who's was involved through his family in the rebirth of a grassroots program that was around in the 60s and the 70s called Pitch Hit and Run. And at that time, it was sponsored by, I think, Tom McCann Kids Shoes or something along those lines. And Major League Baseball and this sports management company in Texas were aligning to rebirth Pitch Hit and Run. And my buddy said to me, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "Oh, not a whole hell of a lot." And he said, "Well, I know you know a lot about sports, and I know you know a lot about baseball. We're doing this thing. Do you want to come out to LA and we're going to do some testing on it and see how it works and go from there?" I said, "Sure, I'm in."
Yeah.
So I headed out to LA for a little bit of time, and we did some testing and some trial events, and it worked well. And then they created a partnership with the company that did the original kind of 3-on-3 basketball called Hoop It Up,
Yep.
called Streetball Partners in Dallas. And I remember right after the '93 World Series, and because I was working kind of pseudo with Major League Baseball, I had great seats for the for the games. And they said, "Okay, you ready to move out to Dallas?" And I said, "Sure, yeehaw, off I go."
What I like about this part of the journey is, it, this is 1993, right? So we're talking about, 31 years ago now. And it is cool to see, because I get the benefit of literally seeing the timeline in front of me. But it's Streetball Partners. You became an account exec for partnerships at Tennis Canada. I do want to get into that, but it's also funny to see it for the Canadian Open, which was sponsored by Demorier at the time, to really paint the cultural landscape at the time. Demorier is a cigarette brand for our American friends who may not know. Corporate sales and marketing for athlete representation at IMG Canada. It just goes on and on down this path. So in 1993, when you got this job at Streetball Partners, did you kind of realize to yourself in the few years that you were there, like, this is truly the path I want to pursue and to be on? Or did your move to Tennis Canada, was that just like opportunistic, or was it very intentional?
Yeah, I mean, what happened? '93 was great. We had a great run in Dallas, and then this thing called the Major League Baseball strike happened in '94, and there was obviously concerns with regards to the affiliation with Major League Baseball teams across the US and running the events and what was going to happen. And the strike, happened, and they said, "Okay, well, we don't know when the strike's going to be over, when it's not going to be over. Do you want to stay in Texas or do you want to leave?" And I said, "Oh, do you have a job for me?" And they said, "No, we don't right now. It's just you'd be living here and go from there." And I said, "Well, you know what? I think it's best if I head out of town and go back to Toronto." Shockingly, as fate would have it, literally almost 3 months to the day, I got a call from Streetball and saying, "Hey, we're starting a hockey grassroots thing." And everybody, because I was Canadian, called me Puck. And that was the year the
Hello.
Minnesota North Stars moved to Dallas. And I'm the only one who knew the rules. And, "All right, Puck, you come to the game with us? You come to the game? Can you explain it to us?" And since I knew so much about hockey, they said, "Hey, do you want to come and run this grassroots hockey program?" And I guess I was a little bit angry to say, all you had to do was give me a job for 3 months. I would have still been in Dallas, and you could have had me run this hockey program. So I said, "You know what? Thank you, but I'm going to take a pass."
Yeah.
And that led me to meeting a few people, because I came into Toronto for the World Basketball Championships in '94, and they did basketball, soccer, football, volleyball, and I came in '94 to Toronto right before the Raptors came, and I met the local event organizer in Toronto for the Hoop It Up during the World Basketball Championships, and we hit it off. And I came back to Toronto and started working with him, and he introduced me to somebody else, and the story continues.
Story continues. While at IMG Canada, you had some responsibility for athlete representation. You would then go on into some client services, account services roles before founding FRC. What do you think you've learned about client management and account management from that time and that experience working with athletes directly?
Yeah. So it's a great question. Athletes, like artists, musicians, are a little bit of a different breed. And, we really worked a lot on the brand side of things and on the event side of things. And it was really kind of linking up brands with properties, whether that was an athlete, whether that was a golf tournament, whether that was a soccer property. And what I took away and what I learned was I had this degree in geography and I know all about planning and how to put together a plan and what that looks like and how to put all of these pieces of a puzzle together. And to this day, I still talk about, doing events, doing sponsorships is really about putting pieces of a puzzle together and building a plan. And so I look at the planning as far as what I take away. And the other piece that I take away is the details. The devil purely is in the details, and being really aware of needs and objectives of a brand, of an athlete, of a music festival, in order to build a plan or a program or a promotion that meets the needs and objectives, that has a definitive plan to it. And the final thing is how to do things in a relevant manner and making it this notion of authenticity. And so that was kind of how I took the school and morphed things into, at IMG, working on some of the biggest events in Canada and knowing a lot about sports, but having not worked in sports.
The decision to start FRC, was there an inciting incident, a moment, life crisis, opportunity? What was it that you said?
Yeah,
Okay, I've been gainfully employed in some pretty cool roles
yeah,
for most of my career. Let's jump into the deep end. What was that day
yeah.
like?
I lived an incredible, I'm not going to say Jerry Maguire-esque type of life, but at IMG, it really was about the events and the athletes and going from there and doing some really cool shit, you know, and working with some really great celebrities and building great relationships. But there was changes at IMG. Founder, Mr. McCormack, Mark McCormack, had passed away, and they were making some changes in the Canadian office. And they said, well, even though you do great stuff, changes are inevitable. Here's a check. I said, great. Here's my lawyer's number. And, we got things figured out in the end. But I was so passionate about music, and I learned how to create these brand athlete connections and do cool shit, pardon my language, in the middle. Can I do that with music?
Right.
How do I connect brands, bands, and fans and take those learnings from IMG, from a golf tournament or a soccer event or a tennis tournament, and do it with artists? Now, all of this thing called streaming was, just about to get launched. And I remember going into so many meetings and I'm saying, all right, everybody, here to talk about, music and entertainment. And, I called it the 3 R's. It was all about a reason to call your client, rock and roll. And I'd always start every meeting at that time, which was, mid 2000s, with, all right, awesome. Everybody liked music. Yeah. Okay. Well, what was the last show you went to? Amazing. Great. I said, everybody listening to music? Yeah. Great. And I said, when's the last time you went into a record store? Who went into a record store in the past 4 months? And the number of hands slowly started to come down. So you must download music, this whole download thing. And yeah. And I said, well, how many of you are buying music legally and paying for downloads? And the number of hands plummeted.
Yeah.
And I said, that's why I do what I do. So how can we work with artists to find alternative sources of revenue and tours and festivals when nobody is paying for physical units these days because of this new streaming stuff. And literally, I took the knowledge of creating events and promotions and programs in sports, and I flipped it to this is what we're going to do in the music space. And FRC was born in Halloween 2007.
Halloween is a special place in my life. We will run out of time to get into the story of too much. In a past life, and I guess still to this day, in some capacity, I was a professional haunted house designer. So,
Wow.
yeah. But anyway, people have heard this story on this podcast before, and we're going to run out of time if I get into it now. But so FRC, Toronto-based music marketing agency that specializes in using music as a platform to cultivate relevant, authentic, and unforgettable connections between, as you said, brands, bands, and fans.
The Holy Trinity.
The Holy Trinity. You guys have worked with BMW and SiriusXM, Ubisoft, Cadillac Fairview, like, cream of the crop clients to help bridge these connections. So much like when you started working with athletes, like, since 2007, obviously a lot has evolved, a lot's changed in the agency ecosystem, the music industry, everywhere in between. But what do you think is like is a hard question, but like, what do you think is the number one takeaway that you've had for how to create those really exceptional experiential marketing campaigns, event sponsorships, when you're representing a property, representing a band? What is the number one takeaway you think that's helped FRC be successful and your clients and partners be successful in the process?
So we kind of based it on two things. We talked, number one, about a passion, and that's my passion for music, the folks who work with me, their passion for music. And the second thing, we call it a passion and a promise. And the promise was to approach things in a very unique way that nobody else could do, or nobody else would think of, or nobody else would dare to do. And I'll give you just a really quick example. We work, and I've worked a lot with a music festival in Montreal called Osheaga, which, aside from my festival, is probably my favorite festival in all of North America. And I love those guys dearly. And we've done a lot of work with Osheaga. And we're trying to, as I say to the serial guys we work with, we try and blow up the box, not think outside it. And I remember calling the head of Osheaga, and I said, I have an idea, but I got to ask you a couple of questions. I said, besides the cost of tickets and the cost of beer, what's the biggest pet peeve that people have with music festivals? And he thought about it. Nick thought about it for about a minute. And he said, the washrooms. We always get complaints about the washrooms. And I said, Nick, have I got an idea for you? And we were in conversations with a toilet paper brand about some ideas. And I created with my team this concept called Music to Your Rears. And we did a complete washroom takeover at Osheaga. And we replaced all of the Portalette toilet paper with premium, I'll say the brand Cottonelle, because they believe in this program. And we replaced it with Cottonelle. In the main washrooms, we added washroom matrons, air conditioning, flowers, artwork, Cottonelle hand wipes. And it literally became one of the most popular and talked about activations that year at Osheaga. To the fact where it was, I was told a story by somebody from Cottonelle that their rep in Quebec was at a grocery store and doing a check-in at grocery, and the rep was standing next to the manager or whatever it was, and somebody walked in asking, where's the toilet paper? And they said, down there. She said, great, I'm looking for Cottonelle. And the manager said, oh, well, I guess they were building an end cap or something. Oh, well, this is on sale this week. And the young lady said, no, I was just at Osheaga,
I need
and I want to go buy the Cottonelle. blowing up the box and doing something that nobody else would do, is toilet paper sponsoring a major music festival in Canada.
I think it is the definition of cool shit is really that story. But
Yeah.
so again, I will refrain from nerding out too much over what you guys do. If I'm being totally honest, I think that so I own this event production company where we still do design, build, and manage some haunts. That just happened to be kind of the lane that I went into. But I think much like yourself, my actual true passion, regardless of what we do today in our agencies, is that figuring out that how to improve the guest experience, whether that's through line management or batching process, or I really nerd out over some very unsexy things. And I think this story, I'm very much geeking out over this story. I'm refraining my geekiness from coming out too much here, but yeah, I think that what people don't understand is how sometimes it's really simple ideas but then really really well executed that lead to those outcomes. When you think of, it's a good segue into, so Tall Pines Festival that you own in Muskoka, for some context, we'll include the URL for people to go check out. But I mean, this coming season, you've got City and Color, July Talk, it's a very legitimate music festival with major sponsors and brands attached to it. So when you think about all the successful activations that you've done for others, what has been the unexpected experiences or realization you've had being on the other side, where you're the person who isn't just coming up with the cool ideas, but is the one responsible for receiving the negative feedback about the
Yeah.
toilets and things like that?
Well, although we don't have Cottonelle, I did tell our porta potty guys that we do need premium 2-ply toilet paper, so that has been taken care of.
Yeah.
Listen, I think it's looking at all of the best practices that we did using other people's money, as my friends at Roots call it OPM, other people's money, and how do we create great experiences that are real, relevant, and authentic and on budget. And that's really what we're trying to do. But in this case, it's our money, it's the sponsor's money, it's the ticket buyer's money. You're paying dollars to come to an event. You want an experience, and we love building experiences. So it's interesting. Yesterday, I had a call with our beverage team, and our beverage team's the same folks that work on little events like Boots and Hearts and Bell and Rolling Loud, and
Yeah.
these guys are unbelievable. And I want to kind of create a community-centered, culturally curated festival, with community being really important, and being a deadhead and just having come back from Vegas and seeing a couple of shows at the Sphere.
Yeah.
It's just all about community.
Mm-hmm.
And there's kind of this essence about Muskoka, both good and negative at times, but it's all about the community and the cottagers, and we're just trying to create experiences at the festival that kind of lend themselves to the environment and to the spectators. And I think about music festivals, it sounds like you've been to a bunch, I've been to a bunch. There's not a lot of things that you can share at a festival these days besides a joint. Um, Dave, how about you and I share a hot dog, and we'll pull the Lady and the Tramp. You'll eat from one side, I'll eat from the other side. We'll meet in the middle, and that's the end of the hot dog. Or you want to share a slice of pizza? Or Dave, we'll share a beer.
Yeah.
I'll take half. It never happens.
Right.
And there just aren't a ton of shareable things at a music festival aside from French fries or something like
I
that.
think if my memory serves, Oshiega has had seesaws and things like this, probably to
That's
help
it.
with some of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Oshiega does a lot of fun things in art. So what am I doing in Muskoka? I'm bringing in canoes so people can go to canoes. I put the festival on a lake so people can go swimming. We have a beach, we have a forest. We're doing paddles. We have amazing artists painting paddles on site. And as part of one of the things I want to do is, okay, what can I share? So we did a deal with Neil Brothers. It's a great snack company, food company here in Ontario. And one of the ideas that I had is I want to create this bundle called Beers in a Bag. And so you go buy a couple of beers and you get a bag of Neil Brothers product, a large format family size bag for one low price. And let's see how it goes. So you have a beer and I have a beer and we're sharing a big bag of
Yeah.
snacks.
It's
So
very pandemic-y in its delivery, right? We saw a lot of restaurants kind of create almost like picnic basket-esque experience.
yeah.
So yeah,
And Tall Pines, just to let you know, is my pandemic baby.
nice.
Yeah. So it was born out of 3 virtual music festivals that we did over the pandemic. Canada Day house parties and the Big Night In on New Year's Eve for Safe Hospitality. And the last one we filmed was totally up in Muskoka in Algonquin Park. And it worked so well that the Muskoka Tourism Agency said to us, hey, why don't you do it in real life? And I was on the patio at Taboo having a beer, and probably should have thought longer than 20 seconds. I said, yeah, sure. Great
No, that's
idea. Yeah, we're all in. I work on enough festivals. I know how to do this.
exactly
And that's how Tall Pines was born.
amazing.
Yeah.
We're going to include links to frcmarketing.ca. You can check out all the cool shit that Kevin and his team are up to. We'll include links to Tall Pines Music Festival. Encourage everyone. What are the dates for this summer, Kevin?
The dates are Friday, July the 19th and Saturday, July the 20th.
Okay. Well, we will haul ass on our side to get this produced, edited, and in market in hopes that we can get some more interest for the festival.
Yeah, that would be great.
And people going to check it out. I myself I'm very excited to hopefully have a follow-up conversation with you about, more than we could cover in this, 40 minutes together today. Any parting words, Kevin, or if I like to ask people if you could go back to that version of yourself in 1993, flying down to Dallas to really get into this world for the first time. Would you tell yourself where you would wind up someday, or do you think it was better for young Kevin to just explore and live the journey without that knowledge?
Yeah. So a couple of things. I think every opportunity, thank you, God, led to another opportunity. And if I wasn't setting up grassroots baseball tournaments or basketball tournaments and dealing with sponsors and putting up signage in the pouring rain at 2:00 in the morning in the streets of Austin, Texas, then I wouldn't have experienced it. And I learned how to do things and do things right.
Right.
From sponsor services to signage to selling sponsorship, and everything piled on led to one another. So I wouldn't change the journey in a second. What I have learned over the years is listen more and talk less, and ask at times questions you already know the answers to. Because as Ted Lasso said in an episode, be curious, not judgmental.
Those are some great words of wisdom to leave on. You can tell how much I've become a professional podcaster. I was just about to be like, okay, we do have a hard out in just 1 minute here. So, Kevin, we so appreciate you coming on, sharing your story. I think we could do a whole other follow up on other projects you guys have done. I'm sure our audience would just eat it up as much as I would. But again, big thank you. Congrats on all the success at FRC.
Thanks,
Hope the
man.
Tall Pines Music Festival is a banger this summer.
Or why?
And yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. It is really cool shit. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Journey Map is produced by Media Propulsion Laboratory, the digital advertising planning and buying agency designed to maximize return on ad spend. To learn more, visit us at www.mediapropulsionlaboratory.com. Thank you for taking this journey with us today.